So today, lads, we're going to talk a little bit about the fourth quarter, and we're going to be talking a little bit about how the Atlanta Dream, in my opinion, just had no answer for Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever in that fourth quarter. And realistically, for quite a bit of the second half, they had no answer for an aggressive.
The hypocrisy is stunning. In a private poll, WNBA coaches dismissed Caitlin Clark as the 9th best point guard in the league. But on the court, they defend her with the panic and desperation typically reserved for a legend in their prime. Against the Atlanta Dream, that private disrespect collided with a very public reality. Clark didn't just lead her team to a 99-82 victory, she systematically dismantled Atlanta's entire game plan, leaving the opposing coach utterly speechless and their team completely demoralized. This wasn't just a win, it was a cold, calculated message to every team that dares to underestimate her.
Let me say this about the Atlanta Dream. Y'all was hanging in there for 2 quarters, but then y'all ran out of gas. Cause you know why? The Indiana Fever ran y'all out y'all own building, and it was a sight to see. Y'all was huffing and puffing, trying to get some air and find some extra wind, and y'all couldn't.
What the Atlanta Dream and their shell-shocked coaches failed to grasp is that they were defeated by a ghost. They prepared for a scorer, but they were haunted by a commander. Caitlin Clark finished the game with just 12 points, a statistic so misleading it's almost laughable. The box score tells you nothing of the true devastation. The real story was written in her 9 dazzling assists, in the relentless tempo she commanded, and in the way she turned a professional basketball court into her personal chessboard.
Today, there's no surprise that the Indiana Fever looked best tonight when the offense was ran through Caitlin Clark. There's no surprise that the offense looked best tonight when we pushed the ball off of a make, pushed the ball off of a miss. There's no surprise that the Indiana Fever looked best tonight when Caitlin Clark was surrounded by players that don't have an ego, surrounded by players that said, I'm going to be MVP of the WNBA this year. And you see how easy it is when you just let Caitlin play ball and others follow suit.
She was a conductor leading a symphony of chaos, and every pass was a perfectly timed crescendo. One moment, she'd snake through a clumsy double team, whipping a no-look pass to a teammate for a layup so easy it looked like a practice drill. The next, she'd grab a rebound and ignite a fast break with blistering speed, catching a scrambling Atlanta defense completely off guard. The Dream had no answer because they were trying to solve the wrong equation. They prepared for a shooter, but they were mentally broken by a floored general who was always 3 steps ahead.
They made sure Caitlin Clark had the ball in her hands. She became the creator of offense. That's what we've been saying. Her and Aaliyah Boston, I believe it was 4 times, got the Stockton-Malone 2-man game working. Dantas got involved at one point with Caitlin Clark. Caitlin was still off on her shooting tonight.
This masterclass wasn't just about securing a win, it was a cold, calculated answer to a narrative simmering behind the scenes. Just days before this matchup, an anonymous poll of WNBA coaches and general managers was released, and the results were baffling. They collectively ranked Caitlin Clark as the 9th best point guard in the entire league. 9th. Let that number sink in. These are the very same coaches who dedicate entire practice sessions to stopping her. The same strategists who design exotic defensive schemes, box and ones, full court presses, relentless double teams, treating her with the defensive gravity of a prime Michael Jordan.
Even when she wasn't exactly getting when it wasn't her putting the ball in the basket or her showing up on the stat sheet, she was burning Jordan Canada. And people don't understand how good Jordan Canada is on defense. She was absolutely burning Jordan Canada. Canada could not stay in front of her. And that is a big thing. That is genuinely a big, big thing, that if you can't stay in front of her, it creates a space for everybody else. And there were some hockey assists, there was good ball movement, there was a lot of things. There was a lot of real positives when it came to Caitlin Clark today.
They then have the audacity to turn around and anonymously claim that 8 other players are better. The hypocrisy is staggering. They game plan for a legend, but rank her as an afterthought, perhaps hoping to diminish her influence through the media. Against Atlanta, Clark didn't need to issue a press release or a clapback on social media. Her performance was her statement, a quiet, decisive demolition that exposed their private fears and their public posturing.
Obviously, tough game. I thought we had a good first half. We were really competitive. Uh, second half we just had so many defensive breakdowns, and give them credit. They were getting extra possessions, and those extra possessions were turning into points just about every single time. So, uh, just valuing ending their possession. It's not enough to force a tough shot. We got to come down with the ball. And then, we had some defensive breakdowns that they made us pay for. They were able to extend the lead. And then at the end, we had to, do some gambling and do some things that really were not that.
Ironically, the key that unlocked this devastating performance came not from an opponent's failure, but from a long overdue strategic surrender by her own coach. Throughout the early season, fans and analysts watched with growing frustration as Indiana's coach, Stephanie White, seemed determined to fit a square peg into a round hole. We saw Clark, arguably the most dynamic offensive engine in a generation, bizarrely relegated to standing in the corner, waiting for a pass that often never came. The offense was slow, predictable, and completely out of rhythm with its star players' instincts.
How the Atlanta Dream were able to really neutralize Caitlin Clark in the first half, and I know Caitlin Clark had 5 first half assists, but they were able to neutralize Caitlin Clark's impact on the game in that first half. And in the second half, regardless of the box score numbers, how Caitlin completely took over. So the big way they were able to neutralize Caitlin Clark, and I think it was almost an issue with Stephanie White as much as anything, is they were...
But in this game against the Dream, the philosophy finally shifted. Whether out of desperation or a stroke of genius, White finally handed Caitlin Clark the keys to the franchise and told her to drive. The effect was immediate and electric. The pace exploded. The floor opened up. The hesitant rookie we saw for weeks was gone, replaced by the unstoppable force of nature that shattered records in college. It was a powerful lesson learned in real time. You don't force a generational talent into your system. You build the demon system around her.
You saw Clark sort of gaining her rhythm as the game went along, sort of returning to her form as the game went along, finding that pep in her step as the game went along, even though the shooting numbers were tour dates again, and she's got to find that shooting stroke at some point. Look, it can't go on all year, but you understand where some of those struggles come from when you deal with a quad injury and then a groin injury, and you're thrust back into the lineup and you're trying to find your way. But I do think it was the way that Clark found her way to the basket that was the difference in this game, really. That was what changed the dynamic.
When a player with Clark's gravitational pull is finally allowed to operate freely, it creates a tidal wave that lifts the entire team. Suddenly, the court transforms. Kelsey Mitchell, a talented slasher, found wide open lanes to the basket as her defender was forced to help on Clark. Sophie Cunningham, a deadly shooter, was left so open on the perimeter it looked like she was in a pre-game shoot-around. And most importantly, Aaliyah Boston, the formidable center who had been battling double teams all season, was suddenly feasting in the post.
One bad game. It's been an inconsistent ride for Indiana and for Clark as well, who's had to fight through a lot of injuries. But I think the encouraging thing from Cece was the fight that she showed on the floor. Clearly, she's not quite at 100%, still working her way back, hasn't found her 3-ball yet, but what she did was attack. She used the physicality against the defenders by putting her head down and going to the basket. That opened things up for her playmaking, which of course is another genius aspect of her game. Once that started clicking, the Fever ran away with things. Sophie Cunningham was everywhere. Clark had it going with Aaliyah Boston again. Kelsey Mitchell was cooking. And all of a sudden, you look up and the Fever are lighting up the score.
Her defender was simply too terrified to leave Clark's orbit for even a split second. This is the dimension of Clark's game that her critics either fail to understand or willfully ignore. They fixate on her shooting percentages, but miss the genius level playmaker who bends defenses to her will and elevates everyone around her. She doesn't just improve the box score, she transforms the entire offense from stagnant to lethal.
They were manhandling Caitlin Clark early in that game. Like, they had 2 hands on her. They were fully getting into the we are grabbing her and we don't really care. Like, that was their goal. Their goal was they were out there to maul Caitlin Clark. They had absolutely no intention of doing anything other than maul.
Clark accomplished all of this while enduring a level of physical punishment that is nothing short of a targeted campaign. From her very first WNBA game, an unspoken memo circulated throughout the league: get physical with Caitlin Clark. This isn't just tough, gritty defense. This is a deliberate strategy of mauling. Opponents are grabbing her jersey, holding her arms, and hitting her with off-ball bumps and shoves designed to test her breaking point. They are trying to intimidate her, to wear her down, to get under her skin, but the strategy is spectacularly backfiring.
And this was a really nice all-around game from the Indiana Fever. And some may ask, well, Rhodes, do you feel better about Stephanie White? No, not at all. Because until she proves night in and night out she's willing to put the ball into Caitlin Clark's hand and let her be the creator and innovator on offense, I will not be sold. I will not be sold. The fact is, Caitlin's going to start knocking these shots back down at some point. And all of a sudden, her statistics are going to blow up.
Instead of breaking her, it is forging her into something harder, tougher, and more resilient. She is learning to absorb the contact, to use her body to create space, and to expose the overly aggressive defense by drawing fouls. This constant physical onslaught isn't a sign of her weakness. It is the ultimate testament to the fear she inspires. Her opponents know they cannot outskill her, so they have resorted to trying to outmuscle her, and they are failing.
Instead of trying to put a square peg in a round hole, this was a tale of two halves. A tale of two halves. A half where the Indiana Fever let Jordan Canada have wide open shots, and a half where they decided to play defense and shut Jordan Canada down and not let Ryan Howard get off. Interesting. A half where we had Caitlin off ball and sitting a lot, sitting on the bench, riding away in the first half, and the second half where, oh my God, she's in the game. Oh my God, they're giving her the ball.
This brings us back to that coach, frozen on the sideline, his game plan in ashes. His defeat was more than just strategic, it was psychological. Clark doesn't just beat you on the court, she gets inside your head long before the tip-off. Coaches spend days watching film, designing traps, and drilling their players on containment strategies. They walk into the arena with a blueprint, confident they have finally solved the puzzle. Then the game begins. Clark makes a pass they never saw coming. She pulls up from a spot they thought was impossible.
This year, and it's just all right, I'm gonna accept that contact, I'm gonna go through it, and I'm gonna score on you. And one. Put the points on the board. You know, Caitlin Clark doing it there. Here's a closer look at that play to sort of give you, you know, an idea of what took place, and the you know, she accepts the contact, gives some back herself, and ultimately gets the bucket. By the way, you know, some size on that dream team, obviously, with Griner inside, and Jones got in foul trouble, which helped.
She changes the game's tempo so suddenly that their entire defensive scheme collapses in on itself. The carefully crafted plan begins to fray. The players on the court start to second-guess their rotations. That confidence on the sideline slowly evaporates, replaced by a quiet, creeping dread. This is Clark's most underrated weapon. She doesn't just break your defense, she breaks your will to execute it.
And give them credit, they were getting extra possessions, and those extra possessions were turning into points just about every single time. So, you know, just valuing ending their possession. It's not enough to force a tough shot. We got to come down with the ball. And then, you know, we had some defensive breakdowns that they made us pay for. They were able to extend the lead. And then at the end, we had to, you know, do some gambling and do some things that really we're not that equipped to do. And they made us pay for that as well, and that kind of made the game a little more lopsided.
And here is the single most terrifying thought for every other coach and player in the WNBA. The version of Caitlin Clark doing all of this, dismantling defenses, embarrassing critics, and single-handedly revitalizing a franchise, is not even close to her final form. She has been openly battling nagging quad and groin injuries all season, performing at a level most players can't reach at 100%. She is still in the early stages of adjusting to the relentless physicality of the pro game and is still building chemistry with a new team. Most alarmingly for her opponents, her legendary three-point shot hasn't even started falling with its usual terrifying consistency yet. The player we are seeing right now is a prototype. The fact that she is already this dominant while still learning and healing should send a shockwave of pure fear through the league. She is a problem that is only going to get bigger, stronger, and more unsolvable. For months, the critics all sang the same tune. Her high-volume, run-and-gun Iowa style would never work in the pros. They said the game was too physical, the players too athletic, and the defenses too sophisticated. But what they failed to understand is that her style isn't a weakness. It's a weapon of chaos designed to shatter the very structure of the professional game. The WNBA often operates on a controlled rhythm, a physical, half-court-oriented pace where defenses can get set. Clark's game is a pure injection of anarchy. By pushing the ball relentlessly, she denies defenses the time to set up their physical traps. You can't maul a player you can't catch. It's like a meticulously trained army trying to fight a guerrilla warrior. Their rigid formations are useless against an enemy that refuses to play by their rules. She isn't just playing basketball, she is changing the terms of engagement, and teams like Atlanta are finding out they are completely unprepared for this new style of warfare. Let's be perfectly clear, the Caitlin Clark that is giving coaches nightmares right now is a playmaker. She is winning games and dominating opponents through her court vision, her pace, and her leadership, all while her greatest weapon remains mostly dormant. So we have to ask the question, what happens when the sleeping giant finally awakens? What happens when this elite, pass-first floor general who already tortures defenses also remembers she's the greatest long-distance shooter in the history of the sport? The dilemma for opponents will become impossible. If they give her even an inch of space, she'll rain down threes from the logo. If they press up to take away the shot, she'll blow past them for a layup or find an open teammate, something she has already mastered. The law of averages says her shooting slump won't last. It is not a matter of if her shot returns, but when. And when it does, the league will be officially put on notice. The player dominating the WNBA right now is doing it with one hand tied behind her back. The rest of them should be terrified of the day she decides to use both. In the end, the scoreboard told a story of a lopsided victory, but the real narrative was told in the silent, stunned expression of a coach who had no more answers. He, like so many others, learned a hard lesson that night. Ranking Caitlin Clark as the 9th best anything isn't just an analytical error, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of the game itself. She is not just another great player, she is a paradigm shift, an offensive system unto herself. The Atlanta Dream coach isn't the first to be left speechless by her unique brand of brilliance, and he certainly won't be the last. The WNBA has a Caitlin Clark problem, a puzzle that grows more complex with every game she plays. And as of right now, absolutely no one in the world has the solution.